Hi everyone, it's Kelly from the Hub here today with our friend Meg, who does all things pottery. How are you there, my friend?
I'm doing great. How are you, Kelly?
I'm doing well. It might look like Megan is in two places. That's because we were troubleshooting some audio. So if you see her in two places, don't get alarmed. She's just one person. So today we are glazing.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
last time we were together, we threw clay, we got it on the wheel, we carved it, we spun it, we whoosh, pulled it, we did all the funny things, and we giggled a lot about how your clay tools also could be used to murder people. We did not discuss that further. And now we are going to make it look not ordinary. We're going to make it look beautiful, more beautiful. Okay,
Yeah.
so it's glazing, right? That's what we call it?
Yep. That is the term. You buy glaze and then the verb is glazing. Yep.
So what do you do?
So yeah, so let me start where we left off last video. So this is, my sunlight is pretty bad
that's
here.
the mug. Yeah.
Yes. So this is a little cup. It's all done. It's been thrown, it's been trimmed, and it has dried. So right now it's really brittle. If I were to squeeze it, it would just kind of crumble apart. And so this is where it waits until it's completely dry, and then it gets ready for its first firing.
And how long can you wait? Like is that, so that's the same one. So it's been a couple of weeks, but like if you got busy, could it wait like a month until you did the next step? Or are you supposed to sort of do it?
No, I think it can wait like 100 years. It just gets in this dry state and it'll stay like that forever. Nothing, yeah, you can leave it forever.
Okay.
Yeah, so it looks like this, and then you put it in the kiln and you fire it. And so the first firing, it goes to a slightly lower temperature, about 1900 Fahrenheit, if I'm right, which that's still very hot.
So, I was going to say, yeah, that's steamy. Wait,
yes.
So it goes two times? It goes two times in the kiln? So it goes in naked, yes, and then it goes in, let's say, adorned.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. You can do it with one firing. I haven't yet experimented with that, but in theory, I could put glaze on this dry piece and just fire it once. But most potters typically fire two times. They do the bisque firing, and then they do the glaze firing.
Okay. And so it makes it, what does that first naked firing do? Does it like, I don't know. I guess I'm thinking of skin. You know what I mean? Like if you're going to put your makeup on, you want your skin to be clean. So like, and essentially glazing is like the pretty parts of you. So what does the first firing do to the clay?
Yeah, so right now this is just dried dirt and mud, basically. Like it's very brittle, very fragile. And if I were to put this in a bucket of water, it would dissolve within a couple of hours. And so what the first firing does is it transforms it into ceramics, which I have another prop over here. So this has been bisque fired, and you probably can't hear it, but if I tap it, it tings. Yeah, and so if I tap the other one, it's like tapping a lump of dried dirt, so you don't hear anything. So now this is actually like a sturdy piece of ceramic. Like I can squeeze it, it's not going to break.
And that could be like a terracotta pot that I buy in the store that's unglazed.
Yep, exactly. Okay. Yeah, so right now the clay is still porous, which means it will absorb water. But that's good for glazing because glaze has water in it. So once it gets to the stage, it's a good time to put on your glaze because it'll absorb it. And I think most people just do the bisque firing because it's easier to glaze this sturdy, unbreakable pot rather than something that's going to crumble in your hands every time you pick it up.
Okay. So, all right. I get that. Yeah. You're giving it more strength. The heat strengthens how the clay lives.
Yeah. I think some crazy chemical reaction happens to turn it from clay into ceramics. But yeah, this is what comes out of the kiln about 24 hours later.
That's how long
you can use
takes?
These for pots. Yeah, it takes a long time. It only sits at the maximum temperature for a brief amount of time, but it's mostly the time it takes to warm up. and then the time it takes to cool down. It takes a long time to cool down.
Oh, so you don't put it in. Okay. So it's not like cookies.
No.
Like cookies, you heat the oven up to the temperature you want, pop them in, they do their business for 10 to 12 minutes, and then you pull it out, and then nobody cares about the oven beforehand or after this.
Yep.
This, I put in a cold oven, kiln, turn it on, it does things.
Yep.
Then I turn it off or down or whatever that is, and then it cools, and it's doing things during the warm up, the peak, and the cool down. It's becoming ceramics that whole time. It's not just at the hot moment.
Yep. And that,
okay.
Yeah, if it goes up in temperature too fast, it can cause some cracking issues because the clay does shrink as it fires too. There's like shrinkage rates. It gets very in depth with that. But yeah, if you get too hot too fast, parts of your clay will shrink faster than others, and then that's how you get a mug out of the kiln without a handle and stuff like that. So the schedule actually does matter. Yeah, how fast it warms up, how long it stays at the hottest temperature, and then the cool down doesn't really matter. It just shuts off, and you just have to wait until your pot's cool enough to take out.
So kilns are built with the rise, the heat up, like the rise, the sustaining, and the fall. That's built into how the kiln works, and you can control the time and the temperature and all that stuff.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Cool.
Yeah, there's different kinds of kilns. There's manual kilns where I think you would just go in and check on it and say, oh, it's been at this temperature for 3 hours. I need to turn it up or down, and you would tweak it that way. But these days, kilns have electronic panels, and you really just input your temperature. You input like the speed that you want it to go up at, and then how long you want it to stay at that temperature, and then you press go, and off it does it.
Right, and you can just go walk your dog and do other things and come back, go to work and come back tomorrow and then manage it. So I'll just say, I watched this historical show because it was fascinating about living in the time just when like mechanization started, and these guys needed to make a pig pen, and they wanted to do it out of bricks, I don't know, or a shed or something like that. Mm-hmm. And so they had to make the bricks to do it. And so because it was at the time when mechanization was just sort of starting, but really expensive, they actually made a kiln. They had like a big outside fireplace thingy where they put the bricks in. It was 4 days that they had to sit and manage it. And, and like feed it with wood and stuff to keep it at the temperature and do all the things. And I was thinking, no wonder you would have one mug if that was your life.
Yep.
You couldn't
exactly.
Right. It would be so expensive. So I was just thinking about that because it was fascinating. I didn't know how they did that before. And it was fascinating to watch. And now you're right. You're like, beep, boop, beep, boop, beep, boop, beep, boop. Done.
Yep. And some people still do wood firing.
Yeah.
But it takes a team of people. They usually set it up like a party, invite, 30 or 40 potters, and then everybody rotates who's shoveling wood into the kiln because it's constant. You just spend the whole night. It's log after log after log into it. And it's not a common occurrence, but people still do it.
I think it would be a very fun, like potter weekend.
Yeah. It would be. I'd love to go to one sometime.
Yeah. Okay, so I know I've asked so many questions this year because I just get so excited. It's so much fun. All right, so it's done. Now it's time to glaze.
Yeah, so I have what a pint of glaze looks like. You just buy them in these jars. This is a brand Amico that I like to use a lot. There's a handful of different brands of glazes you can buy. You can also make your own. I have not yet ventured down that path, but a lot of potters do make their own glaze. It's a lot of raw materials, oxides and silicas and all kinds of stuff you mix together. But basically it's like powdered glass, kind of. That's the easiest way to think about it. And so this is just the powder mixed with water. which makes it easy to paint it onto your pot.
So that's
So-
already pre-mixed. That's not a powder, right? Or is it a
Nope.
powder and then you mix it with water? Oh,
It's a liquid.
like paint. Okay.
Yeah, it looks just like paint. It dries very, very quickly, especially on your bisque square too, because this is porous, so it like instantly absorbs all the water and dries really fast.
Okay.
And then that's why it always looks chalky before it goes into the kiln. It doesn't look pretty. The glazes are very boring and bland, and they don't look anything like what they'll look like at the end product. But yeah, you just paint it on with a paintbrush. You can also dip it if you have enough glaze to fill a bucket. I do not. Glaze is very expensive.
Oh.
So I just have these little pint jars.
So like how much is that little jar? Just, I mean, we're not going to judge.
No, these are around, I think, $16. Some of them go up to
Okay.
20, something like that. But yeah, they don't actually last that long because you need 3, 4, 5 coats per mug. So I think it says on here that you can use 1 pint for, I think, 7 or 8 mugs is typically how far it lasts.
Oh, okay.
So
So when you're like
use a lot of
costing it
glaze.
out, that's how you have to think about it. And we'll talk about that when we talk about that part. But so
Yes.
that gives you an estimate. Oh, okay. So it's like 4 or 5 coats of stuff you have to put on.
Yep. Yeah, 3 is about the minimum. But if you get fancy with layering, or if you want a deeper color, certain glazes need more coats than others, then I've fired things with probably 8 or 9 coats of glaze on it. So yeah, it can be a lot of glaze.
And like, what if you want fancy things? Like, does glaze come? Okay, just because I know that there are some viewers who are like, I like things that are sparkly. Like, does glaze come sparkly?
I actually just got a sparkly glaze. So yes, you can, there's a few glazes on the market that come out glittery.
So
But I don't know what makes it glittery. It's obviously not like plastic like usual glitter, because that would burn out.
right, it would have to probably be a different kind of glass thing.
Or aluminum.
Oh, right.
I
It
don't
could be,
know.
right, it
Something
could be metal
reflective, yeah.
pieces. Yeah. So, okay, so let me ask you this, because I'm not sure I know the difference. So you know how, like, let's say, okay, let's just say we're doing plates, and you want to write to Megan, I love you, signed Santa. Let's say you're making Santa plates. How do you do, is that stuff that you are like writing or like painting a design on? Like maybe you want to put flowers on it, or is all of that stuff glaze too?
Yes. So that's actually called underglaze. And that doesn't come out glossy and glass like these do. That's it comes out just like a matte paint. And it's also really stable. So that would be perfect for like writing someone's name on a mug. But it's not going to make it glassy or shiny or really seal the clay either, which is a big part of why we glaze too.
Oh,
So most people will do their writing on it and then they'll put a clear regular glaze like one of these over it so that it's shiny, sealed, and looks finished.
okay. So that's, if you want to do any of that stuff, you do that like pre-glazing.
Yeah, so I actually haven't used underglaze at all yet, but from my understanding, you would put it on your bone dry, unfired pots. And then once it comes out of the bisque, then you would put the clear over it and then you'd fire it in the glaze firing.
Okay. Okay.
So it'd still take 2 firings, but you'd put glaze on at both stages, if that makes sense.
Okay. Yes. Yes. I get that. Okay. All right. Because I'm thinking like, you have your style, but some people might want to put dragonflies on everything. And
Yep.
so like, how would you do that if was your, like that's part of your brand or, whatever your thing is. Okay.
Yep. And
All
a lot of people do that, and people get really intricate with their paintings, and it's another thing on my to-do list. Let's try that out.
You could draw a whole map on it. You could have, whatever.
Yep.
So, okay. So you do that when it's dry, then you glaze it, then you fire it. And then if you want, But you could put a colored glaze over that too, right? Like if you did flowers on a whole piece and you wanted it even like to look bluer, you could
Hmm.
glaze with blue over the whole thing.
Probably not. So
Aha!
that's where it gets tricky, is that these glazes, they have what's called a flux in them, which makes them mobile. So when it gets super hot, it melts downward, which means if you have put a really intricate design on your mug and then you put like this glaze over top of it, as that glaze shifts down, the glaze underneath it will also, and it'll get distorted and it'll look
Oh, it won't look like dragonflies anymore. It'll look like crying dragonflies.
yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
So people get a really stable clear glaze that they put over their underglaze paintings. I think they make really, maybe they might make really stable white glazes too. I'm not too sure, but I know clear is the most common one that people will put over their artwork.
So that's sort of the basis for a lot of those paint your own pottery places, right? Like you go there,
Yeah.
you get a tile or whatever. I have a whole series of Santa plates, and no, they're snowmen. I lied. I haven't used them in a while. And so then you paint them, and and then I just painted it. So
Hmm.
the place does the glazing for you. I'm sure.
Yep. I think that they would just put the clear over it. I'm
Okay.
assuming that what you got back is probably shiny and glossy.
Yes.
Yep. Then they would put the clear glaze over it. Yep.
Okay. Okay. Why do you do your way? Like, why did you choose the way you do your glaze?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think just because that's what we did in the class that I took originally. I think he
Oh,
probably had underglazes available for us to use, but most people were just, making it a pretty blue. And I don't know. There's so much to pottery that I feel like I could go down like 8 different roads, and I want to do everything eventually, but I'm also trying to like save some pieces of it for later. Maybe in 2 years from now, I'm like, oh, I've been throwing for so long and, perfecting my blue glaze for so long. Maybe I want to try something else.
yeah,
So I'm kind of trying to get really good at one thing at a time before moving on, I think. So
I get that.
someday I will definitely do birds or flowers on my mugs, but
Yeah.
not quite yet.
Just because I'm who I am and I watch lots of interesting documentaries and that kind of stuff. I watched they happen to be like Japanese artisans and they did lots of different kinds of like passed down artistic work. And one of
Mhm,
them was pottery ware, earthenware.
mhm.
And there were men and women who had been, like you say, perfecting their glazes
Yep.
for 75 years.
Yes.
I mean, they were
Yeah.
old people who had been potterying forever, and that was like their thing. They like created these cool glazy techniques and stuff, and you're right, they never moved on to something else because they really wanted to connect with their process.
Yep. Yeah, and
It was
a lot of the
fascinating.
yeah, a lot of the potters I follow on Facebook and Instagram and places like that, they really focus on glazing. They make really
Huh.
simple mugs, and the purpose of the mugs is to showcase the glaze that they make. And they do hundreds of test tiles and test batches, and yeah, that's really their thing. They just love the glazing part of it.
Huh. And
Yeah.
I mean, we talked before about, and I asked you the very awkward question of, do you want to make functional pieces or do you want to make art, whatever art means? Oh, I saw your little fluffy dog that just walked by.
Yes, she did.
Um, but um, that's also one of those things, right? I mean, like,
Oh
you
yeah.
have, some people just make art and nothing is better or worse than the other thing. It's just, that's what I find so fascinating is what is inside of an artist that gets their creativity going? Is it
Yeah.
is it the shape? Is it the feel of the clay? Is it funky clay with additives? Is it the firing process? Is it the, you know what I mean? Because it could be everything that we talk about is, I'm sure, someone's specialty.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I think it tends to be that most potters find their niche in something that they really like doing, and they spend a long time getting really, really good at it. And yeah, who knows? Maybe I will throw mugs forever, and that's what I'll decide that I love. Or maybe I'll try hand building in a year from now, and I'll really fall in love with making ornaments and plates and things that don't require a wheel. It's just, yeah, who knows? There's a lot of different directions you
I
can
mean,
go.
you
Yeah.
you do this that cool. I mean, I call that your brand right now. That your cool little carving thing. Maybe carving will be more of your. You know what I mean, you
Yeah.
could really
Yeah,
go
maybe.
everywhere.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, there's a lot of different things you can do within the world of ceramics. And I had no idea when I first started, but yeah, it's really crazy the variety that you can see.
Right, because you were like, I'm gonna learn how to throw a mug, and then
Yep.
that was it. You went
Yeah.
to a class because you were interested in it, and that was it. And
Yep.
now you're like, who knew the 9,000 million things that all the paths I could go down?
Oh yeah. There's, jewelry makers and
Oh, I didn't even
birdhouse
think about
makers and
jewelry bakers.
yeah,
For heaven's sakes, of
beads.
course there is. Yeah.
Yep.
So, what are your like signature colors? How would I know if I was looking at stuff? I mean, I think I know, but how would I know if I was looking at stuff that it was a you piece?
Yeah,
Right.
so like you said, the carvings, I do a lot of carving. I do have another prop here.
Yeah, and I didn't bring mine with me. Yay!
So yeah, this is pretty typical. It's just a little planter that I made,
Yep.
and it's got a really cool texture on it. And I really like the carving because it always makes the glaze look extra cool. It's probably kind of hard to see with the shine on
Yeah,
that, but
well,
as
it
you can
looks
see, it's
like,
brown and gray.
yeah, and it looks like bark.
Yeah, this one does look like bark. I thought that was really cool how it turned out.
Yeah. So do you like my mug is blue that I have, and you've got
Hmm.
brownisher pieces. And I
Yep.
thought do you also do some green things?
Yeah. So I do a lot of blue. Blue tends to be a popular glaze choice, I think, probably because it's easier to get the colorants in the glaze that works that well. Like, for example, you don't see as many yellow, orange, or red glazes, and I think it's much more difficult to achieve those. So I do a lot of blue because there's a lot of blue glazes available, but also because, yeah, that leads to more combinations I can make. It does lend really well to purples and greens. And yeah, I really like the way that blue glazes turn out. And I feel like they're neutral enough that they match people's other dishware sets. And
Why aren't there yellows and oranges and reds?
I was reading something a while ago about how red glaze was like impossible to achieve a couple hundred years ago. And so it was a person commenting on Facebook, and she was saying, so now when she sees like bright red pottery pieces or even darker red pottery pieces, she thinks it looks tacky because that's not a natural color for pottery to have as it used to exist. And it's something that's like very new, is to have red glaze. I think they just didn't have a way to create the chemicals or,
Well, like
obtain the chemicals
a
needed.
lot of old school red, especially in like food products, even through the modern time, were of course cochineal beetles.
Yep.
You would
Mm-hmm.
grind up those little beetles, their little carcasses. I mean, it's true. People are like,
Yeah.
it is. And that was a natural way that you could have a red color. And I guess if you didn't have that beetle around,
No red.
then no red for you, right? But it was right. Oh.
Yeah.
Well,
So
can I
I
ask
don't know
this
exactly
question?
what chemical makes it difficult to achieve those colors, but
Oh, okay. Okay. Okay, so I was also thinking about like, hmm, You know, lapis lazuli, because it's that bright blue color, and
Mhm.
it's that one of those, like, in my words, I'm going to say semi-precious stone. Is that an accurate way to say that?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Is that, are things like that included in glaze?
You're asking hard questions, Kelly.
Oh, I'm sorry. And you can absolutely say you don't know, and then I'll go research it so that I'll tell everybody else. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I
no.
just get so excited.
No, don't feel bad at all though. Glazing is an insanely complicated world, and I have no problem in admitting that I have just taken the easy path of buying these pre-made glazes
Yeah.
because
Okay.
the raw material sheet at the local ceramic store is just, I mean, it's like a binder full of the raw materials that you buy to mix your glazes with. Like,
Oh,
it
okay.
is
Okay.
intensely complicated, and I have no problem at all saying I don't know. I don't know what makes it blue.
Okay. And you know what? Thank you for being very honest about that, because,
Yeah, no
and
problem
I
at
think
all.
that that's fascinating because, like, now that's all I want to do is know that, because I'm just like,
Hmm.
oh, can you grind up little, like, semi-precious stones, and that also adds, and like, you use indigo as a plant base
Yeah.
for
Hmm.
dyeing cloth. So now I'm all fascinated. Okay, if there are any viewers who are watching who are like, girl, you're so dumb, here's how you do it, please put that in the comments. We would both love to know.
Yeah, I'm sure I could find it with a quick Google search. I know
Yeah,
a bit
of
more about like
course.
what makes the glaze, not the colorants, but more of the other ingredients in it, like the
Yeah.
stabilizers and the fluxes and the glass elements. I know a bit more about that. It's really just the colorizes piece that I haven't dug into researching yet, but yeah.
And I'm quite sure there would be a huge difference in, like, historical ways to glaze
Hmm.
versus modern ways to glaze.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. It's
And
definitely
whatever
evolved
those,
over
yeah,
time.
whatever those two definitions even mean. And there, I'm sure that's a huge other continuum. You're right. We could
Hmm.
talk about glazing forever.
Yeah, I am by no means a glaze expert. Honestly, I paint it on. I Google pictures of how it's gonna look, and then I cross my fingers and hope it turns out nice.
I absolutely love that you're so super honest about that, because you're right. That's where you are in the process right now.
Yeah, and yeah, originally I was a little nervous to do these interviews because I'm still an insane beginner. Like I have just breached the surface of learning about pottery, but then I thought like, oh, why can't I just go talk about the things I do know? And I'm not trying to pretend that I know everything about
Right.
pottery. Obviously don't. Just sharing a little bit about what I do.
Right. And that's the other reason why I wanted to do these with you, because I think that if someone over Googled, like we've all done with, you know, that thing on your toe, and whatever, the leak in your house or whatever,
Yep.
everything, you can overwhelm yourself and then forget or be too scared to even start. So
Absolutely.
I love that you are where you're at, and that you're like, well, and it sounds like it's very organic where you want to go. You're going to do what you're doing the way you're doing it, and then when the mood strikes or whatever, you
Yep.
may or may not move on to another phase.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, some days I just like honestly, it hadn't even occurred to me before you mentioned it, what made this blue. I always just like, oh, the ingredients in it make it blue.
It's the
Like it
blue
hadn't
stuff.
occurred to me what chemical is making it blue.
Right.
But yeah, other time things will occur to me and I was thinking, like we don't make clay. It is harvested. It's a
Right.
natural resource.
Right.
And so then I was wondering like where do they get the clay and how did they get the clay? And so it went down a whole rabbit hole with that. And it turns out all surface of the entire earth has clay in it. I could go dig in my backyard and get a bucket full of dirt, rinse it a whole bunch with water, and I'd be left with clay. So yeah.
Yeah, it's not like, for a bit, people were very concerned about their balloons because they couldn't find enough helium to be able to blow up all their birthday balloons. And that's because helium is an element that you can't make it, it just exists.
Exactly.
And you can't just go helium and then make the balloon stay up. But clay is one of those things that you're not going to exhaust it.
It doesn't really run out.
Yeah, we could all pot till we drop and there will still be dirt.
Yep.
Available to all of us. Yeah. So and that's fascinating that you were like, am I being unenvironmental because I'm like buying all this clay? And you're like, nope.
Yeah.
All pot. Yeah.
It's like, all the potters taking all of the Earth's clay supply, but no, we're not.
Right. You're like, well, I'm gonna have to find a new hobby.
Yeah, that was honestly my thought. And I was like, maybe I need to like start digging out of my own yard to like leave some clay for everybody else. But no, there is so much clay.
Be hilarious if like people, like your neighbors were like, what is she doing? And you're like, I'm saving the environment. I'm only using my dirt. That would be awesome. That'd be really cool. All right. So we got the little sidetrack, but that's part of the thing. So you glaze and then you put it back in the kiln and it does things again. It removes the porosity, or actually it seals the porous parts. So you put a glaze on the ins. Okay. Oh, I guess I have a question. Show me your little plant pot again.
Sure. There's some dirt in there, but yeah, it's glazed on the inside.
You didn't glaze the bottom.
Yep, you can't. So you can see I glazed here, and then this is just the raw clay.
Because it has to sit.
Yes, and glaze melts. It turns into like a liquid glass in the kiln, and so it will stick to anything that it touches, which can cause big problems if you overglaze and it runs off of your pot onto the kiln shelf. Kiln shelves are very expensive, so you always want to try to avoid that.
Oh, and I like how that you say it, because it's liquid glass. It's not like you can just go like and it scrape it off with a sponge. It's glass, so that's not how it works. Which is the property that you want on your clay piece, so then you can use it, but you have to be really careful.
Yes. And you can try to chip it off. I've been lucky enough that I haven't had a glaze issue like that. But people will grind or chip it off, but eventually you have to replace your shelves after a while, because pieces of the shelves will come up with the glaze and then you've got pock marks all over it. So it's best to prevent that.
I was gonna say, and you rent space in that kiln that you use. So
I do.
your kiln owner really, really wants you to be a thoughtful glazer, rather than if you had your own kiln, you could willy-nilly do whatever you want.
I have nightmares when I drop my pots off at her house. I will wake up in the middle of the night and, oh my gosh, did I wipe my mug good enough? Is that one going to run on her shelf? Like it fills me with terror.
That's cool, because that's a whole other part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're being a conscientious glazer in that.
I would hate to ruin one of her shelves. I would feel terrible. I'd drive an hour to the store right away and get her a new one, but I would just feel so bad that I ruined something of hers. So I'm always really, really careful with that.
Yeah. That's fascinating. Okay, so that we're going to have to meet like down the future when you get your own kiln, because I totally want to know if you feel the same way about your own kiln, or if it's different. You know what I mean? If you're like, I want to learn stuff, so I'm gonna wreck shit, and then you're just gonna just do whatever because you're experimenting with technique and all whatever.
Yep. No, I can promise you that I will be more reckless if it's my own kiln shelf. I think I definitely won't be as scared to ruin it, because then my mind is just, oh, what the heck? It's just my $80 or however much they cost. I don't have to worry about somebody else's.
Right. So I've glazed it, I've taken it out, and now I use it.
Yeah, now it's ready. The clay has vitrified, which means it's no longer porous. The glaze has added an extra layer of sealing, prevents it from stains, makes it easier to clean, and it's ready to use, and it will exist for hundreds of years.
How does that make you feel that your pieces will exist for hundreds of years?
Kind of bad because if somebody doesn't want it, I'd like for it to naturally, decompose. But yeah, that's just the nature of it. Is that, I mean, you could grind it up and then basically turn it into like sand. But yeah, they're pretty permanent.
So as our Warner family, we will all be passing down our homemade items from Meg onto our children and nieces and nephews and stuff. So we will keep all of ours in our own family.
Yeah, hopefully they don't break before then, or
Yeah.
drop it or something.
I have to tell you, so to all the viewers, Meg and I pre-talked because you have to do that when you're doing an interview. And she wanted to talk about selling tonight. And I didn't tell her at the time that there was no way we were getting to that, because I had several questions in my head about glazing and fire. And so next time we chat, Meg's like, Kelly, next time we chat, we're going to talk about her Etsy store and we'll show it to you. Yeah, we can show it.
Yeah, sure.
And anybody who wants to purchase can feel free to be excited about buying. And we can talk about the whole, like, so you've made it, now what? Because I think that that's a whole other thing, right? Like, it's all fun and games to be creative, but if you want to then make money at it, you have to make decisions about what happens next.
Yeah, and then you start to struggle with, oh, do I make what makes me happy, or do I make what will sell better? Luckily, the things that I love to make are also selling, so I haven't had that problem yet, but I know a lot of potters struggle with that, trying to decide. I mean, they have to make money, but they also don't want to ruin their passion.
Well, that'll be very interesting to chat about. So next time we see you, my friend, that's what we will chat about. How you can choose to make money if you want.
Yes.
That sounds great. Thank you very much. We will chat again next time. See you, everybody.
Thank you, Callie.
You're
Bye.
welcome.